Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Fantasy for the Ages, the show where father and son get together and talk about fantasy, science fiction, other nerdy things that we happen to enjoy. Today, it's just Jim here coming at you with one of those nerdy things I enjoy, something we consider fantasy adjacent. I'm talking about horror today. Horror films for the holidays. But before I get to that, thank you for being here with me. I hope you enjoy what I share with you today. And if you do, show that to us by clicking that like button down below. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, we hope you'll check out what you find here and become one of our subscribers. That would be fantastic. Down below, there's also the place where you can leave comments. Let us know what you think of what I say here today. And look in the show notes for all the ways that you can interact with Zach and I, our Discord server, social media, even our email address. A few notes before I start today. We often imbibe when we do any of our longer episodes, and today I am sort of imbibing H2O, agua, water, because this is my second episode today, and I did wine for the first one. I don't need more if I want to speak clearly during this episode. Very nice. And it's important I speak clearly because there's a lot of you listening these days. Our YouTube count subscribers, we've hit 487 today. So we're getting very close to 500. I'm already thinking about how cool it will be when we break 1,000. So keep telling your friends, spread loud, far and wide the goodness of Fantasy for the Ages. But most especially, again, like and subscribe. YouTube really likes when that happens, and any comments are valued. So let's talk about horror films for the holidays, the best of them that are out there. It's pretty much a monumental, insurmountable task to settle on the absolute best horror movies in any particular category. Nevertheless, I have decided to take a shot at calling out some of the best horror films of all time that are centered around some major holidays here in the United States. For each of the following holidays, I'm going to try to give you a top 3. Now, are these the definitive top 3 for each holiday? Probably not. But they are 3 I find very worthy. And if you haven't seen any of these and you consider yourself a horror movie fan, you'll want to download a copy and have a watch. Let's get to some holidays. No need to waste time. I'm going to start off with Thanksgiving, and then I'll work my way through a year of holidays from there. If you think hard enough, you'll know why I started with Thanksgiving. There actually aren't that many movies directly tied to the themes of the American Thanksgiving holiday in the horror genre, but there are some. And my third best, because I'll go third, second, first each time, my third best is Thanksgiving, a 2008 ultra low budget horror comedy. It features a supernatural killer turkey. I mean, right there, I don't really have to say much more, right? This turkey is terrorizing a group of college students, rather cliche, heading home for the Thanksgiving holiday. The premise is just terrible, because apparently this turkey was created centuries ago by Native Americans to wreak vengeance on the white man, and it gladly kills anything in its way. This horror comedy fits firmly into the camp of being so bad, it's good. But not everyone's going to agree with that. If you like things like that, this movie is for you. But, you give it a try, you may just think it's really bad. Number 2, Christie, 2014 film. This film's tie to Thanksgiving is simply that it features a girl who stays at college, when all her friends leave for Thanksgiving break. She thought she'd be hanging out with her roommate. They both had planned to stay. But then her roommate's dad arranges a last-minute ski trip, and so I'm out. I'm going skiing. Christie's left all alone. Christie tries to make the best of things, but that's not so easy when you apparently become targeted by a cult looking for a victim to murder and you fit their profile. Her effort to survive gives us all sorts of suspense, action, and thrill. This is a fairly high production value movie. Definitely levels above Thanksgiving. And number one for Thanksgiving holiday horror movies is Escape Room from 2019. This is the biggest budget of the three I'm sharing. It's a horror movie that's also a suspenseful mystery as six people get invited to play in an escape room over the Thanksgiving holiday. All six are strangers, but they come to discover they are all there for a reason, and one that requires them to figure out what they bring to the table, what their specialties are, because only by working together using their unique backgrounds and knowledge will they be able to puzzle through this mystery, solve the puzzles, and get out of the escape room alive. Although escaping alive may not exactly be in the cards. It's a very entertaining film. It really doesn't lean into Thanksgiving. It's just, it's set over the Thanksgiving holiday. But it's a really good movie. So check that one out. Escape Room. From Thanksgiving, we move to Christmas. Unlike Thanksgiving, there are a ton of Christmas themed horror movies. What is it with people? Why do they think of the wonderful beauty and traditions and love of Christmas and then they want to kill things? So I had plenty to choose from for this, but it really wasn't that hard to pick my top three. Number three, Silent Night, Deadly Night, 1984. Now, there are a number of sequels from this film, but the first one is the classic. It's the only one, honestly, that's any good. This classic holiday slasher has nothing supernatural about it. Rather, it features a boy who's traumatized as a child when he first has his basically insane grandfather tell him some really terrifying, scary things about what Santa is truly all about. The guy was really mental. And then shortly after that, he sees his parents murdered in front of his eyes by a guy in a Santa suit. This all leaves him really disturbed as a child, now orphaned. He grows up to become basically a mentally unstable man who's trying to make his way in the world, seemingly is doing okay, but when he's working at a store that then has a Christmas party, Christmas is clearly not his favorite holiday, he's forced by his boss to wear the Santa suit and play Santa for the Christmas party. Okay, this already has him on edge. It's triggering all sorts of things. And unfortunately, events occur that lead him to snap. He goes on a murderous rampage, now playing the role of Santa, killing everyone who he considers naughty. These kills, fantastically creative. This is really quite a good movie. It's not a super high budget, but it's also not cheap either. Some special effects that are pretty well done. I enjoyed this movie back in the day when I first saw it, and I've watched it a few times since. It's worthy. Number two, Krampus, 2015. Not all Christmas lore involves jolly old St. Nicholas. This film focuses on the European myth of Krampus, a horned beast who punishes naughty children during the month of December. However, in this film, Krampus has been amped up considerably, now appearing as a hulk of a creature, a demonic presence that horrifically punishes any people who've lost the Christmas spirit. Now, this one doesn't go so much for jump scares, but it still has plenty of spooky about it. It makes for a good watch. But number one, Black Christmas, 1974. This is a considerable throwback. Many consider this movie the first true slasher film. It's a classic of the horror genre. Just like Silent Night, Deadly Night, there's nothing supernatural about this movie, which ups the realism and actually makes it scarier. A group of sorority girls staying over the Christmas holidays at their sorority house are getting into the festivities. There may be some alcohol involved when a killer sneaks into the house. And the girls start getting killed off mysteriously, one by one. The moment at the door with the eye peeking through, just chills. Really well done, setting a scary mood. Black Christmas. Great movie. Let's move on to New Year's Eve. As with Thanksgiving, there really aren't many quality horror movies tied to this holiday. There are ones tied, but I said quality. I'm actually only going to give you two, in fact, and the first one isn't very good. It's just unique. So that would be New Year's Evil, 1980. The killer in this movie is just a guy knocking off his victims, but he's choosing to do so at exactly midnight, working his way across the United States. So he keeps moving from time zone to time zone to time zone. You got lots of midnights. Add to this a punk rock band blasting its music out, and that's about what the film has going for it. Some great 1980s punk rock music and a killer who's just got a unique shtick. Some would say that's enough to make for a great movie. I would not say it's a great movie, but it is a little unique. Now, that was 1980. There was another New Year's themed movie that came out in 1980 that is far superior, and that's called Terror Train. This classic slasher film is the ultimate flick for the New Year's Eve holiday. Coming out, like I said, also in 1980, there's plenty of horror movies coming out in the 80s. This one was in more of the upper tier style. A group of friends with a shared guilty secret from the past get together to celebrate the holiday aboard a train. Let's go for a train ride. However, they have a stowaway aboard the train, an extra passenger who's out for revenge and is taking them out one after another. Let's add a twist. This party on the train is a costume party. So everyone's wearing costumes, including masks. It's very simple for the killer to slip in and out of situations, and nobody knows it's not someone they expect to see there. A highlight of the film is Jamie Lee Curtis. Her performance in this movie helped establish her as the original scream queen of slasher films. It has the nice, unique quality, too, of the whole film basically happening on the train, a setting that had not been used yet for the slasher genre. And it's done very well. How the killer gets in and out of circumstances is very creative. All right, let's move on to Valentine's Day. I've got three for you here, and they're all quite good. Number three is My Bloody Valentine, 2009. Now, if you know anything about horror movies, you recognize that that means I'm talking about the remake. There's an original older film, My Bloody Valentine, but my number three is the remake. And it came during a period where a lot of older horror movies were being remade in the 2000s and 2010s. It's a good story in its own right, being sure to put some twists on the original story so as to remain an unpredictable mystery for those who are watching. The movie benefits from a much better budget than the original, improved special effects, and even had the fun of being theatrically released in 3D. Nothing like a pickaxe coming right out of the screen at your face. One additional benefit of this flick is Jensen Ackles performing one of the lead roles, an actor probably best known for his 15-year run starring on Supernatural. Number two, Lover's Lane, a 2000 movie. This is a great flick, despite being a low-budget slasher. On Valentine's Day, a man murders a couple getting hot and heavy while parked out at the local Lover's Lane. The killer is caught, but now, 13 years later, he has escaped, and he's out for some fresh kills. In the crosshairs are some teenagers who are just out for a good time on Valentine's Day, but they happen to be the children of various adults who've played a role in the killer's imprisonment and treatment over the years. Oh, and to up the horror, the killer has a hook for a hand to help him with the dirty work. This is not one of the greatest movies of all time, but it does lean into its low-budget slasherness, as well as the Valentine's Day motif. Oh, and it happens to be Anna Faris's first feature film. You can find a ton of top-name actors who got their start in horror films, and for this one, Anna Faris. All right, number one for Valentine's Day. You might have saw this coming. My Bloody Valentine, the original in 1981. This is without a doubt one of the best holiday slasher films of all time. A mining accident on Valentine's Day leads to a sole survivor who has to resort to cannibalism to survive. And when he's finally rescued, he's gone quite insane. 20 years later, The town is finally ready to depart from its historic ban on Valentine's Day parties. There's bad history with that day. So they schedule a Valentine's Day dance, only to see a warning appear that the dance better be canceled or a bloodbath will occur. Now, the people in charge, they're like, oh my goodness, what's going on? And they go to check on that mining accident survivor and find he's no longer in the mental institution he's supposed to be in. So he may be the source of the threats. Not taking any chances, they cancel the dance. But the young people of the town, who weren't even alive 20 years ago when that accident happened, they don't understand what the big deal is, so they make plans for a party of their own. Again, the older folks, they haven't talked a lot about the past. They block it out, so the kids don't know any better. They use the old town mine that's been abandoned and shut down since that accident as the location for their party. Predictably, it doesn't end well. This movie is full of graphic kills, jump scares, and terrified teens running for their lives. It's an enjoyable romp of a slasher film. Let's move on to St. Patrick's Day. And my third choice here is Maniac Cop, 1988. St. Patrick's Day in the Big Apple is a whole thing, with parades, green beer, and parties galore. In the midst of the holiday chaos one year, a killer is wandering the city dressed as a police officer. But he's not just a killer. Turns out he's huge, unstoppable, and apparently undead. Bruce Campbell, a campy horror movie star going back to the original The Evil Dead film, he stars in this movie as a police officer who's trying to find and stop this killer before the murders end up pinned on him. Not a super high budget on this film, but it actually is quite entertaining. Number 2, Leprechaun, 1993. You can't think of St. Patrick's Day without thinking of leprechauns. While they aren't specifically tied to the holiday, they are indubitably linked to the Irish, as is the holiday. So leprechauns and St. Patrick's Day just end up going together. And Leprechaun is a delightful film, thanks to a fun story, a campy sense of charm, and the delightful performance of starring leprechaun Warwick Davis. And wow, Davis sports one heck of a makeup job for this role. Leprechaun also has the claim as the film that launched Jennifer Aniston's acting career. It was her first leading role. The movie was a commercial success, and it launched a whole franchise of Leprechaun movies that are still coming out. And it takes us to our next film. Number 1 is actually Leprechaun 3, which came out in 1995. There are 8 current films in the Leprechaun franchise, and as I say, there's still one being developed. Warwick Davis plays the title role in the first 6 of these films. And of those, Leprechaun 3 is undeniably the best. It leans in for its role as a horror comedy. You don't take these movies too seriously. But they've got graphic, ridiculous kills. And the Leprechaun, he's dropping witty one-liners all the way through. The entertainment value is high. You won't have much for scares in this film, but you will get the kills and the special effects and the laughs. They just make this one fun horror movie to enjoy. Moving on, we go to July, and in the United States, the 4th of July being Independence Day. I've got 3 movies for you here. Number 3, one of my favorites of the slasher genre, I Know What You Did Last Summer from 1997. It's a great 90s horror flick. A group of teenagers out for a good time when they accidentally hit a pedestrian with their car. They've been drinking, they're totally at fault. Rather than call the authorities and report this pedestrian they just hit and killed, they decide to dump the body and act like nothing happened. A year later, it becomes clear somebody knows what they did, and a mysterious killer in a trench coat with a fishhook is hunting them down. Living with the guilt of their decision was hard enough. Now just living becomes the challenge. This movie features Jennifer Love Hewitt and Sarah Michelle Gellar at the top of their game. This is a highly entertaining 4th of July movie. Number 2, Get Out from 2017. This movie is just an amazing piece of cinema, from the writing to the acting to the cinematography, with some deep themes that are actually quite disturbing. The horror in this film has many nuanced shades. Don't look for any slasher villain here, but when you do discover the bad guy, the shock is pretty incredible. I strongly recommend Get Out. But then I go to number one. The number one horror movie for the 4th of July Independence Day holiday has got to be Jaws from 1975. It's definitely not a slasher film, but it terrified people enough that beaches actually saw a decline in visitors for years after this movie came out. The shark in Jaws, the mechanical creature, this is not CGI. They had a working shark they created. Well, working is a bit of an exaggeration. It was actually a royal pain to work with this thing. The mechanical parts kept failing. They struggled to keep it looking realistic. The happy result is that they minimized just how much you actually see the shark, which gives us more of a hidden menace lurking just outside your vision. Add to that some great jump scares, including the opening sequence, and you get a terrific horror movie. Well, I've done almost all the holidays I want to talk about. I've got one more for us today. The granddaddy, we got to talk about Halloween. There's a ton of Halloween related horror movies because Halloween is about scares and horror. Yeah, it's about princesses and dressing up as puppies too. That's fine. But the scary stuff, that's what a lot of people go into Halloween holiday for. And there are some great scary movies. I've got three here. This was the hardest to select a list for, and you're not going to agree with my list. I'm pretty sure. But these are three movies that if you haven't seen them, I will stand by. These are worth your time. Number 3, Night of the Demons, 1988. This, again, is a campy film with somewhat gross, gory, and not particularly realistic special effects. Some are, some totally aren't. I particularly remember the disturbing thing that one of the possessed individuals does with a tube of lipstick. If you've seen it, you know what I mean. Ick. But, ooh, cool. The premise is a bunch of high schoolers using an old abandoned mortuary for a heck of a Halloween party, which doesn't go so well when a demonic force emerges and starts possessing people, leading to plenty of deaths. This film does not take itself too seriously, yet manages to pull off plenty of good jump scares. In style, this one has always reminded me a bit of the original The Evil Dead, and similarly, it has become a bit of a cult classic. Number 2 is the most recent of any movie I'm listing on this episode, Scream 6, which just came out this year, 2023. I mean, this may seem awful recent to be making a best of list, but I've got it up here for 2 reasons. 1, it's a really well-made movie. It's well made, it's well acted, it's filmed beautifully, and it has plenty of scary moments. But 2, it takes full advantage of how the ghost face costume has become now the most worn and sold Halloween costume in the United States, going back to the original Scream movie so many years ago now. I mean, where that ghost face costume comes from, there's different elements and nuances, but most of us would say there's a painting, The Scream by Edvard Munch. That dude never would have seen that this thing he puts on a painting ends up becoming the number one Halloween costume. But so take that into account. When so many people on Halloween in real life are dressing up as the ghost face killer, the real killer could be anyone, anywhere. You'll never see him coming. That makes for some truly tense and terrifying moments in this movie, even heartbreaking times. All right, that brings me to my number 1 for Halloween. We could say the biggest and best of the movies I'm listing here, and it should not be a surprise. Number 1 is Halloween, 1978 classic. This is one of the granddaddies of the slasher film movement. It spawned a long running series that I think has finally ended as of 2022's Halloween Ends, but you never know. It gives us one of the icon terrifying killers, Michael Myers, or just the face. I just this creature with no emotion, no reaction, just killing. Many of the sequels were great for a variety of reasons. Some not so much, though I personally enjoyed all but one of them. But this original film, there was some special magic to it, and it still holds up. I can still watch the original Halloween and love the experience. All right, those are my top movies for these various holidays. If you have one that, wow, you definitely would have put in the top three and I didn't mention it, be sure to let me know. If I haven't seen it, I'm going to want to check it out. I do love a good horror flick, and any kind pretty much pique my interest. So put it in the comments or find us on social media or join us on Discord and tell us your thoughts. I want to know what I should know. Also, if I put something on here that you're like, are you kidding me, Jim? There's no way that's a top three film. Let me have it. I love interactions and I want to know what you think because you will make me smarter or at least give me something to watch. All right, that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.